The other way.
Hey guys, happy Finish
Is
Friday.
this on? Is this on?
I always hesitate. I'm like, should I? Should I invite Gene to do this with me? I don't know if he's going to behave himself or not. Anyway, welcome to Finish Friday, and I am excited to partner with my partner in crime and my best friend and my painting buddy.
There's not enough room on this camera lens to get both of us in here. You go ahead, and then you can throw it on me.
Okay, so here's the deal. We always talk about milk paint. We talk about how to have texture. We talk about the finishes that we want to create. We talk about how they all play off one another in our homes, because it's all about mixing texture to really be able to get those finishes that we love and that play off of one another and that look great in interior design. I cannot not teach you the correct way to lacquer furniture. I'm going to take you to my house in a couple of days, maybe on Easter, and I want to show you all the lacquered pieces of furniture that I have in my house. I adore lacquer. Lacquer is not high gloss latex paint. Lacquer is its own world, and there is definitely a right way and a wrong way to do it. Because if it's done correctly, you will have a beautiful high sheen piece that looks like something that was bought out of a very high-end furniture store and can be quite expensive. We want to show you how you can do it the DIY way. You can do it yourself, and there is a correct way. Gene's got a piece of furniture here, and we're actually going to be painting it for you today. We're going to be doing a drawer, and he's going to be talking all about it. So it's one of those things where if you have a buddy, you go to estate sales together, you go to garage sales together. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many adorable pieces that I see at estate sales would look awesome in lacquer. Jenny Lynn, these Jenny Lynn beds that you see are fabulous in red lacquer. Buy colonial mirrors that nobody wants to buy anymore. Do it in a pop of bright color. It totally changes it. Lacquer has the ability to be able to take something that's a very classic, maybe more American traditional look and make it really something quite fabulous. I want to show you some of the lacquers. I'm going to turn this around. All right, ready? Now, here's some of the lacquers, but we're going to be showing you in white today. We have a gorgeous chocolate mousse, an orchid color, which is very much on trend, mixed with dark greens. We've got a really beautiful pink, Easton green. We've done this in a Campagna desk, was absolutely fabulous. Of course, you can never go wrong with a basic black. We've got eggplant. We've got Belgian blue, which is one of our best-selling colors. Belize, we're going into summer, guys, and we're going into homes with, it's all about colors. We've got Lagrange or Lagrange, depending on tomato, and of course Brisson red. Y'all know I have painted a very traditional mirror that I got at an estate sale in Brisson red, and it was amazing. I used it on top of a black and white toile wallpaper, and it was absolutely fab. So here's the deal. We want to be able to educate you the difference about lacquer. How is it different from other paints? And I have my expert here with his spray booth, his cardboard spray booth, which is great. It's what we need.
And I'll sleep in it tonight.
So hopefully he'll behave himself. So anyway, I'm going to turn the camera around and introduce you to my best friend, Gene Howard.
Is there a pillow? Hey guys, thank y'all for being with us. Happy Good Friday and happy Easter to everybody. Today we've got this drawer that we've rescued from, I guess, Habitat or one of those fun places. And we are going to use this as our sample on lacquering. And one of the things, as Amy was saying about our lacquer, is that it's a true nitrocellulose lacquer. It is not it's not spray paint. It is nitrocellulose lacquer in an aerosol form. Normally this would be done in a large pot with a industrial sprayer, spray rig like they use to spray cars with, or refinishing furniture, but now we've got it in a do-it-yourself form. So it's very easy to use. It's great for any end table, chair, desk, and But today what I wanted to show you is the technique. This is not, again, it's not a spray paint. This is not applied like you would hairspray or spray paint, where normally you would just do this and it's just, but you're not going to get the same finish as you do with this high gloss. It's almost like the equivalent of an automotive finish, not as durable. And remember, it's lacquer. It's not airplane paint. This is it's a true lacquer. I wanted to show you something because, again, we're talking about technique. And when you're working on surfaces, if my videographer would, let's just say this is the top of a console, a nightstand. Imagine it a little wider, a little longer. And if I'm going to apply my lacquer, I'm not just going to start here and start spraying everywhere. I'm going to start at the end and make my passes. A pass is when you go back and forth.
So wait, are you not going to go when you're lacquering? Are you not going to go from side to side?
I'm going to go this way. Now, what Amy said, you can do that. A lot of times I will do that. I'll go this way and then come back after it dries a little bit and go the other way so that there's no telltale signs of if I overlapped too far apart or something like that. So, but
are we spraying down here and not up here?
No.
Okay.
Again, I can't. It's too hard for me to explain with it up like that when I've got it standing up like this.
So we're going to spray down here.
No, I'm just explaining the technique. Okay. I'm not going to do the technique.
Okay, got it.
So again, we would go about 6 to 8 inches and back and forth, and we would overlap and give it time for the lacquer to apply. You don't want to go too fast. You're going to get overspray. Overspray is the number one issue that a user will encounter because they're either too far, they're too far away, they're not 6 to 8 inches, they're going too fast, or they're not overlapping the coats, they're jumping ahead too far.
So overlapping is very important.
Yes, and we'll see this. Right now we're doing a horizontal surface, but I'm going to change to a vertical surface in just a second, so you'll still see that. And notice that I am pushing, I'm not pulling. Reason being, if I start at the far end and work backwards, I'm going to throw lacquer into my fresh lacquer, and it's basically like throwing sand.
So you're saying you're pushing the lacquer this way.
Right, because I'm pushing the lacquer coming out of the can away from the lacquer that has already been applied.
That's a really good word.
Because if I work backwards, again, think of it, you're throwing sand into paint. You're just going to get all this overspray, and it's going to be rough and dull.
Gotcha.
And so same thing, now that we'll put this back up.
Kirby said, "Oh, the dreaded overspray."
Yes. So we have done our clean slate, as we always do. Clean slate it really well, get all the residue off, just go over, wipe it, make sure it's good and dry, and we're ready to spray. Now, primer. People mistake the lacquer primer for being something you would use on metal because it's a primer, or people think, oh, I've got to use the lacquer first before I use my lacquer. Or use the lacquer primer before I use the lacquer. The two reasons we use lacquer primer, it's a sanding sealer. So it's like a thick, soft lacquer. And what it does, if this was raw wood, we would want to seal it before we lacquered it. Otherwise, that raw wood is just going to absorb the lacquer, and it's going to take more lacquer than necessary. So if we put the primer on, that will seal it so that it's not absorbing as much lacquer. And normally 2 coats of primer, you put the primer on, let it dry, lightly sand with 400 grit, put another coat of primer on, let it dry, sand with 400 grit, you're ready to go. Or let's say this is a grainy wood. Let's say this is oak, and it's got a lacquer finish on it. but it's got, there's grain and we want it smooth. Same thing, that lacquer primer will help fill the grain of that oak so it's not as grainy, so my lacquer is going to come out smooth finish. So as you see, this is neither grainy nor is it raw wood. There is a finish on this already. So the lacquer primer is not a necessity.
Can we lacquer an existing painted piece of furniture?
Yes, you can. Again, you want to clean slate it first, get any grease, anything off. Let's say it's painted and when you run your hand, you can kind of feel brush marks. You can go in and lightly sand that and smooth it down. The reason, and I'm going to be talking about sanding between coats, because sanding levels so that it continually, if you think about it, if you got this under a microscope, it would look like mountains and valleys. And sanding between coats is lowering the mountains where it's more level with the valleys, so you get a much smoother finish. And the smoother the finish, the more light reflective value you get, so that makes it look even glossier. So little bit of refinishing lingo there. So we're going to start with this after we've used the clean slate. We've gotten it clean. Now this is a vertical surface. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start at the top and go across and work my way down. Again, doors, drawers, I would set where they're horizontal and do it, but for the technique purpose, I want you to see how I'm applying on a vertical surface. We want to make sure we shake it well. Shake it for a couple of minutes, switch arms, that way you get a good workout, little aerobics, little calisthenics on it. So
I told you I can't let him do these videos, guys.
And also, you want to make sure your lacquer's room temperature. If the lacquer's been sitting in the garage and it's 40 degrees, 50 degrees, bring it inside, let it get to room temperature. I'll even take some warm water and let this sit in some warm water so that
Why is that?
It just allows the lacquer to get more fluid, because the warmer it is, the more fluid it is, and the better it will lay on your piece of furniture.
Can you talk about our little cardboard setup that we've got here?
Yes,
It's fancy, isn't it?
Let's talk about that. I had to, never mind. So what we did, let's say I'm in, you do not want to use lacquer in an enclosed area. It is solvent based. And so you want to be where you've got ventilation, outside is good, a garage open good. I don't know if you can hear it, but we've got a fan going so that it is creating a breeze across here. But we're inside this spray booth so that it's protecting us from the flow of that fan. And it's always good too, if you can get if you're going to do this any length of time, get a respirator. Not the N95 COVID dust mask, but an actual respirator. You can get those online. Maybe some of the paint stores carry them. I think they carry them as well. But it's not the dust mask, it's a respirator. And that way you'll get better ventilation with that as well. So we've shaken this well, we're ready to go. And again, I'm going to start at the top and work down, because again, that way the gravity takes my overspray and it drops down away from the fresh lacquer that's just been applied. If I start at the bottom and work up, that overspray is going to get in my fresh lacquer, and again, it's just like throwing sand into wet paint, and it's going to be rough and dull. If I was doing this for a customer, or if I was doing this for Amy for something in the house, I would paper and protect this inside. We may not want to paint it. We may want to leave it or do a different color. So I would, wrap that up so the only thing exposed would be this drawer front. And again, 6 to 8 inches. And again, we don't want to go so fast that we're not getting enough product on the surface. If you go too fast, it's just overspray. There's no lacquer and pigment given time.
They're ready to
do
see
that.
some spraying.
I'm ready to do it. I just want to make sure I don't want to
That's
hear
what
I
they-
didn't cover the bases on something. Here we go. See, I'm about 6 to 8 inches. See how I'm overlapping. And I want to keep my movement smooth. I don't want to stop. And there we go.
Okay, now I did notice something. You started spraying over here.
Yes, I start off the surface so that when I start, if I don't put a bunch of spray in one area at one time, and what's going to happen, it's going to run. So I want to make sure that I start over here and come across and not start on my piece, because I'll just get a big spot. Now I've got a little bit of run here, and that's okay. I'm glad, because somebody's going to say, oh, I've got to run. What do I do? We will let this completely dry. Usually it takes about 20, 30 minutes to dry, and then I'm going to use 400 grit sandpaper. Don't use 100 grit, 180, 220. What's going to happen is you're going to see scratches in the lacquer. When you've completed your lacquer, it's going to be, you'll see those scratches from the sandpaper. So 400 grit is what you want to use. So what I'll do is let that completely dry, and then I'll come back, 400 grit, lightly sand it, and it'll be ready to spray again. Sometimes when it's not as bad, not too bad as this, I can come back and just add a little bit like this. Know that this is not my finished coat, my final coat. This is just letting me do a little touch up, and then let it dry, come back, sand, 400 grit, and then I'll spray it again.
About how many coats of lacquer should we do to this? And we talk to everybody and we tell them, you don't use sandpaper with one step. The lacquer is totally different. So tell everybody, why should they sand in between coats?
Well, I did. Remember, I said that's a leveling. Remember? Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So about how many coats do we need to look at doing?
Look, you're going to need at least 2 coats. One for coverage, and 2 to build up so that you've got a nice finish. 3 coats, that's not unusual. Sometimes 3 coats are necessary.
Even 4, we've done 4 before. When we want it really gorgeous.
And again, they'll say, well, then why don't I do 10 coats, and it'll be, but what happens is you'll get so much buildup of the lacquer that it takes longer to dry, longer to cure, and you're going to end up, it'll be very easy to chip because it's too soft. So again, we'll let that dry, and then we'll take some sandpaper, which I bet we didn't get.
Let me see.
Well, that's okay. We're gonna. I don't know that there's any 400 grit.
Yeah, we do.
Do you? Okay. So what I'm gonna do? Let me take this over to the fan.
See how I tell you how smart he is? He's so smart. Okay, so Gene, question. How long do we need to wait for this to dry?
20 to 30 minutes. Now we're
20 to 30 minutes, but we're going to rush it up.
Rush it.
So he's got another drawer that we're going to work with. All right, let's turn this around.
Let's do.
You're going to show them now on a...
Here's another drawer, and this time we're going to start top to bottom, and again, this so you can see a little bit of See, I'm overlapping. And see how I go, I don't stop here. I'll go on past and again begin spraying before I get to the piece. There we go. So see, you can tell, I guess, that it definitely needs, it's going to have a second coat and possibly a third. So let's see if our other piece is dry. So does that make sense? How we started top to bottom, or if it's horizontal, we start at the front and push our way towards the back.
What have you noticed with people? What's their biggest struggle? When you get a question from like a customer support ticket, and they're asking you, or they've run into a problem or whatever, what is it as a rule?
Overspray. It's overspray that's caused by a number of issues. It may be that they were outside trying to spray and it was windy, and the wind is moving the spray pattern to where it's not getting the product on the surface. It's blowing it everywhere, or they're too far away when they're spraying. So basically, it's just like shooting sand on it. It's just going to be rough and dull. Or they're applying it too fast, or they're applying it like hairspray or spray paint and not doing it in that pattern or technique that I just demonstrated. So it's overspray is the number one issue, and it's caused by a number of reasons.
Okay. So do you think our other piece is dry?
Let me go see.
Okay, here's what's funny. Every time we do this and we're trying to show you how to use a product, I have to show you who's watching us. Look at this. This sweet little puppy. This is Theo. Say, hey, Theo. Theo, can you say hello? Say, I'm the shop puppy. And Mom and Dad sent everybody home early to have a sweet Easter holiday. So it's just me and my mom and dad. It's just Jean and I in here. We sent everybody home. We said, go enjoy Good Friday. And we made sure FedEx and UPS came and pick up your packages. All right, so here we go. I'm going to turn this around again.
This is still
Kind of wet.
Yeah, and it's important, the longer you allow it to dry, the better. Like I said, 20 to 30 minutes minimum, but I can tell that these little runs are still tacky, and so if they're still tacky or soft, when I go to sand it, it's just going to smear it. So I'm not going to try to sand it. I'll just put another little coat on there to kind of even that out. But it's, again, let's say it's completely dry. The longer you allow it, the better. And you'll just lightly sand it. You want to sand with the grain. In this case, the grain was running back left to right. And I'll just lightly sand this with my 400 grit. I'm not trying to sand it off. I'm just smoothing it out a little bit.
I just want to show them the 400 grit. Is this a wet dry sandpaper?
Yes, this is a wet dry sandpaper. You don't have to use it wet, just use it dry. And then again, just lightly sand, and then we'll be ready to come back and spray another coat on. So again, I'm just going to spray a little more just to try to even this out a little bit. One of the things when you're working on a surface, whether it's a side, it's the top, a drawer door, you don't want to ever stop before completing it and walk away from it. Because if you stop and then you pick back up where you left off, what's going to happen is you're going to be putting new lacquer in that dry lacquer, and what's going to happen is it's going to create a halo or a division. You're going to see the differentiation in it. So the one thing about lacquer is if you get a little scratch, you can't touch it up unless you've got enough refinishing skills to know how to go back and buff that out to make it all blend. Otherwise, you have to respray that whole section, maybe a drawer, maybe a door, maybe the side or the top, but you've got to do the whole section so that it all blends in. It's not just about just hitting that one spot. Hope that makes sense.
All right, so after we've done 2 or 3 coats of lacquer, sanding in between with 400 grit sandpaper, then what do we need to do?
So again, after I've had my 2 or 3 coats, I've got great coverage. I like what I've got. I've lightly sanded it because I'm going to use the Bright Idea, which is just a clear, high gloss nitrocellulose lacquer. And I've lightly sanded this. I always want to wipe this residue off after I sand. I sand it, wipe off the residue.
Is it good to use a tack cloth?
Yes. If you go to any paint store and ask for where their tack cloths are, basically it's just it looks like to me cheesecloth that's been soaked in kind of a sticky substance, and it's like wiping off with a Post-it note that's just covered in adhesive, and just wipe that off, and then you're ready for your clear coat. And the clear coat is not a necessity, but what this does is that it adds another layer of gloss that gives it more depth. When people talk about expensive cars, luxury cars and sports cars, a lot of times they talk about how many coats of clear coat is on it, because that gives it much more depth and makes it look more expensive. So with this, all you have to do is again, one coat of, once you've got your color, you only need one good coat of your Bright Idea.
Jean, we have a question. Kirby's asking, let me move around. Kirby's asking, is it necessary or can we buff pieces after we spray them with lacquer? After the Bright Idea coat dries, would buffing be helpful or necessary?
It's not necessary because it's high gloss as it is. If it was a satin and you wanted to come back and buff it with a buffing compound to bring that sheen up, but this is already high gloss. Buffing compound may not make much difference. May just be more labor and cost of material.
So guys, as you're going to estate sales and you are looking at pieces like this, let me come around to him. You're going to find Campagna desk. You're going to find just old pieces of furniture, maybe mid-century pieces. Those mid-century pieces have simple lines. You're not going to want to do them in a milk paint, but they would be awesome done in a really bright color like this. It would pop. The lines are simple, and it's really going to play off of the other pieces that you have in your house that you're maybe doing milk paint or a painted finish or even a stain finish. Okay? Now, so this is our Bright Idea.
Okay. It's hard to see because of the lighting. And ideally, this is when it is, when that drawer would be turned up and it's horizontal, you can see much better the application than it does when it's vertical.
You're overlapping everything. You're working from top to bottom. Very methodical, almost like that cam was your paintbrush.
And you notice that they're smooth.
Can you see, look at the sheen on that, guys. Can you see that? Look at that.
And it'll dry that way as well.
It's going to dry that high gloss. It's really fabulous. We have so many lacquered pieces in our house that we absolutely love. Look at that. It's so fab. Good job, Jane.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if, you know, again, a little effort of the 400 grit sandpaper and time to be able to allow adequate drying time between coats, It's going to give you a great finish.
So what do we do to this? Now that we've got this gorgeous high gloss finish, and maybe we've done it in Belgian blue or black or whatever, what do we need to do?
And now you want to let it cure. Allow it, several days to cure, and every day the lacquer will harden. Keep in mind now, this is a furniture lacquer. It's just, think of the pieces of furniture you have in the home that are probably predominantly stained and then have a clear lacquer on it. If you throw your keys on top, it's going to chip and scratch. Or if you drag something across it, it's going to scratch it. Same thing. This
Protect
is not,
it.
It's not bulletproof. You want to take reasonable care with it. Same thing with the tops. If you're going to put a glass of water or something, you want to use a coaster because it'll leave a ring just like it does on lacquered stained furniture.
So, there you have it. You're going to see, I'll take you when we're at the house, I'm going to show you the pieces that I have in the house that are lacquered. When we made furniture, we made a lot of lacquered furniture. That was a big seller for us. White was our #1 selling color, I believe, in lacquer. And then we would do
black.
And black. White and black lacquer were very, very popular. But do this, guys. When you go to your estate sales and when you see these very traditional, even colonial looking designs, those are the pieces I actually like to lacquer because it's pushing and pulling. It's that yin and yang. And it really can make something go to a whole new level, especially when you want to have a pop of color. The other thing is campaign desk. Mid-century modern pieces that you wouldn't necessarily want to do in a chalk paint or a milk paint are perfect in lacquer, and a beautiful pop of color, maybe gild the hardware. So, Jean, thank you. You did a great job. And now, guys, it's time to go to estate sales. Have a great Easter weekend. Have great Easter egg hunts. Hopefully the weather's beautiful in your neck of the woods, and we'll see you back here next week, guys. Mwah. Happy Easter.